So in today's video, I'm going to tell you why I think Patrick Ta had the worst 2024 out of any of the beauty brands. So this is specifically about his beauty brand, not the person. I don't know anything about his personal life. And I don't have any insight really into his sales. So for all I know, the company could be doing great financially, but just public perception wise, there have been a few kind of stumbles over the past year. So I thought I would do a full face of whatever Patrick Ta products I have and kind of give you my thoughts along the way about the various products that have kind of spurred some of the controversies. So I am filming this on New Year's Eve. My husband and I like to stay in and just, nibble on some appetizers, drink champagne and that kind of thing. So yeah, we're staying in, but I thought I would still do a nice festive New Year's Eve look. And I also mentioned that because it is December 31st, so there wouldn't be much time for any other brand to kind of steal Patrick's thunder, if you will. So I'm going to start off with kind of a hydrating, moisturizing step. I think Patrick Ta has some products that might do that, but I'm going to use the Estee Lauder Futurist Aqua Brilliance just to give me a little bit of added hydration. And once that is applied, I'll just quickly apply my Charlotte Tilbury corrector underneath my eyes. All right, so now that that initial kind of prep is done, I'm going to go in with the first Patrick Ta product. So this is the Major Skin Hydrolux Luminous Rich. First of all, first complaint, his packaging is a little hard to read because it's white on rose gold. But this is the Major Skin Hydrolux Luminous Skin Perfecting Foundation, and I have it in the shade Too Rosy. So this is the first controversy, and I'm not really going in chronological order. When the controversy happened, I'm going according to the step of the makeup. So this foundation retails for $58, which for whatever reason caused sticker shock for a lot of people. I mean, his palettes are $70. I'm going by prices now, so I don't know if they've gone up. His prior foundation was $52. I mean, you got a foundation and a powder. So I don't know why this in particular caused so much sticker shock, if it was just in relation to other foundations on the market. My kind of general thoughts on that are, I think brands have a difficult time either way, either kind of setting themselves at a certain price point right when they launch, and maybe people having certain feelings about that. But I've seen some comments here and there on the internet about how brands should start lower and then maybe raise their prices once they become more established. But I think that would also get a lot of pushback. I mean, brands are raising their prices incrementally. We have inflation and everything, but I don't know. I think it's better for a brand to kind of position themselves where they want to be price point wise in relation to what is on the market from the get-go. So I agree that $58 is a lot for a foundation. Whether it is that much more compared to what he's already released, it's difficult to say. So that is what that looks like on my skin. You can still see a lot of freckles and blemishes and everything coming through. I might add a little bit more here. I have tried this out a couple times and I do like it. So for me, this is a product that kind of suits my dry skin type. As far as the actual performance of the foundation, I don't think I've heard anyone say that it's a bad product necessarily. I think it was the price that most people were kind of complaining about. I think people who haven't really kind of gotten on with this foundation is because they have an oilier skin type, or for whatever reason it just doesn't work well on their skin. But most of the reviews I've seen kind of recognize that. So yeah, you're not going to get a ton of coverage out of that. You can see I have that much left on my hand. It's not the most buildable, but I'd say if you, it is a bit runny as well, I have to be careful about that. But I'd say if you do have drier skin and you're looking for light coverage and a more hydrating formula, then I think it's really nice. Is it the best product ever? Is difficult to say. I did have a little bit of a hard time finding my shade match. Like I swatched it in store on a couple of occasions before I settled on my shade. And I think the shade I settled on does look good on me. I think it's a good match, but yeah, that was, I think, kind of a difficulty I had. The packaging, I mean, it's nice and weighted. The rose gold, like I said, is not necessarily my favorite, but it's very consistent across his brand. So I am by no means a Patrick Ta apologist. The last foundation that he released, which I have somewhere over here, I thought anyway. So I grabbed the last foundation that he released, which I reviewed, and this didn't really work out for me, but I thought maybe I could try it to add a little bit of extra coverage in certain spots and maybe use the powder. So I think with this particular product, and this is a product I don't think anyone really said they enjoyed, and I have it in the shade Fair 1. I think it was just an issue of, it's almost too light really, an issue of he found success with those blushes, and so he felt like he had to kind of replicate that in different form factors. We'll talk about his bronzer contour in a moment, but yeah, I think that's a little bit of kind of form over function. I'll try this under my eyes. I don't know if this is going to really be the best, but yeah, I don't think this was generally well received. I think it does maybe make a better concealer than it does a foundation though. So maybe it was just not marketing it correctly. So let's leave it there for now. So I do have a couple of his lip products. They might both be the same formula. This is the, what is it? Major Glow Lip Shine. Yeah. So these are the same formula, but I have two different colors. I think I purchased this one. This is in the shade She's an Influencer. And then we also have it in the shade She's Expensive. And I think I got this particular one because it was in some kind of BoxyCharm or whatever. So I'm not sure if these are supposed to be plumping, but they definitely do have some kind of minty element, which is just not my favorite when it comes to lip products. So for that reason, I just haven't really reached for these, but I think I recall some people speaking highly of them. And I think he has some products that I don't have, like lip liners, eyeliners, that kind of thing. He does have some brow products. So in a recent order I placed, he did send out the Major Brow Defining Pencil, and I got it in the shade Blonde. I do also have his lamination gel, and then he sent out his brow wax, which I think I already had. So I don't know if he was just trying to get rid of older product or what, but it is nice when brands do that a little bit. So while I'm doing my brows, I guess I'll talk about the next topic. So you may have seen on TikTok, there was one creator in particular, but I don't spend a lot of time on TikTok, but I understand it may have been kind of echoed or whatever by, I think that's a tad worm, to be honest, by some other creators. So basically there was this creator that said, you know, Patrick Ta, the brand, hadn't paid her for some work she had done for them, and she had followed up via email and DM or whatever else, and somehow it just wasn't getting resolved. And of course, we only have, well, Patrick responded, but we don't really have all the facts with that story. And so, again, I'm not a Patrick Ta apologist. I think I was going to say before I got distracted that when I reviewed this foundation, I did not give it a positive review. In fact, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of a lot of his products, so we'll kind of cover those in turn. So I'm not a Patrick Ta apologist, but I like to think of myself as being kind of a rational person who can kind of approach a situation somewhat objectively. And I don't really have it out for Patrick, and I'd never heard of this creator either. So anyway, I'm gonna try this lamination gel again. It might be getting a little old, but anyway. So we don't have all the facts. So I struggle believing that a brand founded by an Asian man, how do I say this? He is himself a minority. So I would hope that as a minority, and I know this isn't always the case, he would not purposely kind of take money out of the hands of fellow minorities that they are owed. I think that brow gel actually worked out pretty well. I didn't apply it kind of thickly as a lamination layer, but I think they sell this as a travel size now too, if you just wanted to try it out. Yeah, so I would sincerely hope that that's not what happened. You never know really what's going behind the scenes. Like, people do all kinds of nefarious things and seem perfectly nice on the surface. But again, like, I think honestly it's more likely to be a factor of, I'm gonna start with the Cream Contour and Powder Bronzer Duo and the For Contour 1 brush. I think it's more likely that it was mismanagement at his company rather than anything nefarious. Should a kind of global brand, I think he's global now, do better and pay people promptly? Absolutely. I know from my own experience that sometimes it just does take a while to get paid by a company. Like, sometimes you do kind of have to, follow up, and, like anything in life, when you're dealing with companies and you think something is not quite right, like sometimes you just do have to be your own advocate and kind of follow up. And I'm not saying that she didn't follow up. I'm just saying that we don't really know what the situation was, what the communication was back and forth. So yeah, if she was due to be paid by a certain date, then absolutely she should have been paid by that date. But again, we just don't have all the details, and I really don't think it was a race thing in my heart. I think it was just mismanagement. And I think I've heard that other Black creators have spoken out on this topic and said that they've had similar experiences. I don't know that any white creators have spoken out, or creators of other races, but that's not to say it hasn't affected other creators as well. I don't know. I think it's one thing to call out the brand when you're frustrated and you're not getting through. I think it's different to say or to infer that there were some kind of racial motivations to that behavior, is kind of my take on it. What do I want to do next? I'm going to do some powder from this compact. And I could be wrong. It could have been, something nefarious that, is very unfortunate and should not happen, especially as we're heading into a whole new year here. So, I don't know. That's just my take on it. Like I said, I think it's good to believe people, but it's also good to just take a pause sometimes and just consider what might be going on. So I'm just applying this powder from the foundation. So hopefully I got my point across well, but anyway. So just to speak quickly about the contour, for me, that contour shade, it leans a little bit too warm, a little bit too yellow for me, and this is She's Statuesque, if I didn't say. I'll apply the bronzer as well, because why not? So that particular product, I think a lot of people really liked, and I think it and this brush both received like Allure Best of Beauty awards several years ago. That particular brush I just used, I think he's replaced it with a dual-ended brush for the most part. You can, I think, still buy that particular one that's single-ended on his website. So if you like the idea of the brush, but you only wanted one end of it, then you might take a look at that. And I will have everything linked down below, of course. They will be affiliate links, as usual. So yeah, and this is okay for me. I do prefer a little bit of a cooler tone, rosier bronzer, but when it comes to a fair bronzer, it's not terrible. Okay, so that is it for that product. So we have blush, highlighter, and eyeshadow. So as I said before, his blushes are really, I guess, what put him on the map or were kind of his bestseller for a long time. I have the shade Not Too Much here, and as you may have heard, his recommended technique is to go in with the powder and then apply the cream on top. And it does have a nice little flap to keep powder out of it. And the reason for that is to give a little bit more life and freshness to the cheek. So I have it in 3 shades. So I have Not Too Much, which is one of the newer ones that came out, a little bit more forgiving to my skin tone. She's So LA, so that is what those look like next to each other. And then the other one I have here is She's That Girl, which is much brighter. I also do have, I think, his first holiday palette that he released, which had some nice shades in it, but they could be a little bit intense. I think his palette, I don't think it was last year, it might have been the year before, where mine arrived broken and I just kind of sent it back. I think I might have like swatched some of the fragments or whatever, but anyway, this is a nice color for me. I like this one. So yeah, so generally I think his blushes have been really good. I did also really like actually his other blush formula, which were the Velvet blushes. He discontinued these, I believe, but I've kind of held on to them. And yes, I keep things in the packaging because otherwise everything looks identical. So at least with the packaging, you have some kind of label indicator of what the color is. So they had a different closure as well, not like these where you have that kind of Tom Ford style where I'm never sure if it lifts up with the ledge or whatever. But yeah, these were just really nice blushes as well. So in my opinion, it's kind of a shame that he discontinued them, but I can understand wanting to kind of simplify things. So let me pop on some of the cream of this blush. And of course, this is one of those products, like any successful product these days, where I think there are some dupes at the drugstore. I want to say maybe Catrice. See, I mean, it gives it some more dewiness for sure. Whether or not you want that is kind of up to you. And you don't necessarily have to layer them. You could just wear one or the other. So it's nice having that kind of flexibility as well. All right, so I think that's it for the blush. I mean, I think it's a net positive. They're good products. I don't think anyone would necessarily say anything different. Okay, so let's go on into the highlighters. So this is another product that released this year, and it wasn't the price necessarily that I think turned people off. I think it was just the performance of the product. There were some inconsistencies in formulation. So this one also has the cream and the powder. I have it in the shade My Love, which is supposed to be some kind of diamond type effect. I'm gonna start by applying maybe the powder on one side and the cream on the other, and then I'll play around with layering them. Let's swatch these. Yeah, so I think these swatches are always pretty, aren't they? These were just not well received in terms of the product themselves. And every brand has flops from time to time, like products that just don't do well for whatever reason. So this is the highlighter. I mean, quite reflective there. I think the biggest offender of this particular product was, I forget whatever the second one was called, but that was, so you can see the difference in just the cream and then the highlighter, powder highlighter. So I'll apply this kind of balmy side on top. Yeah, so one of the shades just ended up looking kind of gooey. Like the formulation wasn't quite there. There were some quality control issues, I guess, which, you know, unfortunately can happen to any brand, but there's a difference between products that, like I said, the foundation works for some people and not others based on skin type. There may also be differences based on preferences. So that's natural to have a product that doesn't work for absolutely everyone. But I think the needle on this one kind of skewed towards not great for most people. I don't mind it. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's superior to other highlighters I have in my collection. It wasn't such an absolute fail that I went out and returned it, but anyway. And again, I think that's kind of the issue of one product for a brand doing well, and namely the blushes in that kind of form factor with the blush and the cream, and then a brand just trying to kind of reiterate on that particular idea, whether or not it necessarily works. So again, Patrick Ta is not the first or the last brand to kind of beat a dead horse, so to speak. But we'll see what 2025 holds for the brand. Coming up to eyeshadow. So I don't know that this was necessarily something that happened this year, but I think a lot of people have been talking about it more in the wake of recent events and just talking about the brand generally, like I'm doing now. And that is his eyeshadow palettes, possibly having something going on in them that they shouldn't. So I'm going to show you my palettes. I have the Major Dimension 1 and 2, and people have said that there is mold in the palettes. So that is what my Major Dimension 1 looks like. I'm trying to show you. Like, if you look, I might have to take better pictures. Like in that bronzy shade, it looks like there might be something kind of fuzzy on the top. So I was never totally in love with this palette, honestly. So this might be perfectly fine to use. I'm trying to get it at the angle. Maybe you can see there. Yeah. Do you see how there's maybe something on the surface? I did actually have straight up mold in a palette once. I think it made the thumbnail of Jen Love's What's Up in Makeup one time. It was the Emily Noel palette that she did with Revolution, I believe, and I had straight up mold. Brand new, it had mold in it, and that was kind of not disputable. What the brand has said, so this is the Major Dimension 2, and I think maybe that like burgundy shade, yeah. You know, I don't know. It could be fine. I think they've said that that is Wax Bloom, but again, it's not a palette that I'm so in love with that I want to risk my health to continue using, if that makes sense. I would really love to see a chemist independently test some of these palettes to see if it is in fact mold or if it is Wax Bloom or whatever that Patrick Ta said it is. I haven't seen that. I'm not saying that no one has done it, but I haven't seen it. So I would personally really love to see that again, just to have an objective, you know, thing to fall back on. So in lieu of the Patrick Ta shadows, I'm going to use the new Natasha Denona Mini Eye Sculpt as kind of my matte shades, and then we'll get into kind of the last controversy which is of course the eyeshadow duos. So I'm going to start off with the lightest shade in the Natasha Denona formula. 3 of these shades, these 3 here, the creamy matte ones, are all repeats of existing Natasha Denona shades. She renamed them, but you can always check on the numbering because she numbers her shadows sequentially. So you can always check the numbers to see if they've come from a previous palette. So going into that next more beigey, silky matte on a classic crease. So I have a photo on my Instagram that shows you exactly where the shades are coming from. I know some people in reviewing this mini palette have compared it to like the Patrick Ta 3 palette, I believe, when it comes to an all matte palette. I've thought about purchasing that palette off and on, but I typically don't wear all matte looks. I'm just taking that same, is it light? Yeah. Light shade on a, what is this called? Flat definer, just to help prevent any creasing. And then just kind of working my way up the palette using a mini booster. So this is the first kind of repeat shade. I do really like her silky matte formula, I have to say. Especially as someone like me with fair skin, it's nice to have kind of easy blendable mattes that you don't have to really think too much about. So going back in with my classic crease and that second light shade, and just making sure everything is well blended. Okay, so I just wanted to give some basic definition to the eye. I might go in later to kind of boost things up a little bit. So I do have all 5 of these, I think. And I did film a short form video that I posted on TikTok, and I will repost it to YouTube so you can find it there. I'll include a link to it if you want to see kind of up close swatches of all of these. And I swatched them in a few different lightings. Again, one of my critiques of this packaging is, unless you hold on to the boxes and store them this way, it's just kind of a blank canvas. Like you have no idea what you're opening until you open it, unless you remember what the shade is. So this one is Talk to My Team. And this was another thing people were talking about in the context of that Black creator I mentioned, whose name I did not commit to memory, I'm sorry. So this is the kind of gold, white gold and silver. This is We Need Better Lighting. I might hold on to that one. The pink, I'm gonna skip on that one. I might incorporate some of this. That one actually kind of makes sense as a duo. So these are the super gold ones. I mean, with what I'm wearing, it might actually make more sense to do this rather than go into more of the cool tones. This is Do You Know Who I Am? So I understand it might have been cost prohibitive for him to come out with some kind of bigger eyeshadow palette to include this formula. It is, I think we've established a different formula. I think, how do I unpack this? Firstly, I think the packaging, like I talked a little bit about the functionality of it. That creator I mentioned made a big show of like just snapping them in half and kind of throwing all of her Patrick Ta products into the trash. I will say it wouldn't be the first kind of luxury makeup product that doesn't have fantastic quality. Like I pulled out I bought this years and years ago. I don't know if they still make it, but I bought this little Chanel compact mirror because I was feeling fancy, kept it in my purse or whatever. But the plastic on one of the sides did break off, and so now it will kind of come out or break off entirely if I'm not careful. So I've held on to it just because I paid so much money for it, I guess, and I want to say it was like $40 or something ridiculous. So I have held on to it, but I think like a lot of things these days, they're just made to be disposable. And to get to the cost, then yes, these are more expensive than like a single shadow, but I think the formula is different. We'll talk about that more in a second. But yeah, it's not the same formula or manufacturing process, I think, as his other eyeshadows, so it would make sense if the cost was different. He did say in his infamous video that he wanted everyone to have a mirror, which I find to be kind of not perhaps the most useful. I mean, it's more useful if you hold it this way than if you hold it this way, but I could have done without a mirror personally. I'm gonna go into the top shade with this Rephr brush. So maybe packaging these in duos, you know, was too kind of novel, I guess, for the market. So people kind of reacted accordingly. When there are single eyeshadows in this type of formula that go for like $30. You can also find them for a lot less, of course, but. So just tapping that on the lid. I have to say, they are very pretty. I will definitely give him that. So if I were just left up to my own devices, would I purchase all of these? Probably not, but I think they are pretty for what they are. I'm gonna try applying some of this other kind of warmer shade. Same Rephr 28 brush. And so, yeah, going back to Patrick and his videos, his TikTok, I think I'm getting a little bit of fallout, but it's not too bad. I don't know if he had a huge social media following before he founded this brand. I don't think I was really kind of aware of him, but that's not to say he didn't have the following. But I don't think he's really doing himself any favors by posting kind of response videos on TikTok. My sister-in-law did PR, so maybe she would be able to say it better. But yeah, I think it would probably be best for him if he took a step back from the kind of public interface and had someone else kind of manage the account. He's still going to be the face of the brand, and he could still do kind of the artistic content and everything like that, but I think it generates more controversy. Like when he filmed that kind of apology video about the creator who didn't get paid, and he uploaded one video and then deleted it and uploaded a different one where he was crying more. It was just odd. Using this one now, just use my finger. So yeah, so I think it'd be better if he took a step back, and when people were kind of giving him crap about the cost of these eyeshadows, I mean, we all saw that these have kind of gone in and out of stock. So, you know, according to some schools of thought, there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? So maybe that kind of generated more sales for him. I often wonder how much of a brand's market is just creators buying the newest, hottest thing to make content, and especially if it's controversial, then they'll want to rush out and purchase it. Specifically smaller creators. Larger creators can get PR or whatever. But I do think about that a lot, and I know I kind of give in to that from time to time. I'm gonna use the Victoria Beckham pencil in Cinnamon. It's kind of a soft brown kind of liner. So yeah, so that video, and then also when he filmed his kind of defense of his pricing, which, like I said, I think it's right to point out that there are other brands that charge almost as much for one, and he was giving you two. I think that's a fair point. I think a lot of people got fixated on the 100% pearls line that he had, which I think is kind of demonstrably false if you look at the ingredients. That's why I have these on, by the way. And I'm not a cosmetic chemist, so I'll let those who are kind of speak to that more in depth. But I think there is a lot of kind of, I don't know if it's just ignorance or if it's kind of willful ignorance, or taking things in their most negative light intentionally. But when he was saying pearls, I don't think he meant literal crushed up pearls. I think it was term of art in the cosmetic industry for that type of pigment. So people who are complaining, well, it's not crushed up, you know, freshwater pearls, it's mica or fluoroflagopite or whatever they are. I think that's a little bit disingenuous. Or if not disingenuous, then ill-informed, perhaps. I'm gonna use my Clinique bottom lash here. So I think those are the main topics I wanted to cover and give you my thoughts on. Definitely time to toss this mascara. Checking my notes here, one other thing people complained about was the difference in formulations across the eyeshadow duos, which I can understand. I kind of like that the Still at the Club, his names are kind of cringe, but anyway, I kind of like that this one has a little bit more of a metallic formula, so it makes a really nice duo kind of paired together. You can pair the others together, as I did, but you're not necessarily going to get a lot more depth or dimension doing that. So I understand the critique, but sometimes different shades do have to be formulated differently, and I'm not saying that's what happened here, but I think one thing you see with, I think foundation specifically, is depending on how deep the shade is, they need to have kind of different pigment loads, and they can't have as much kind of filler, I don't know if it's titanium dioxide or zinc oxide, which are like the white minerals that go into mineral sunscreens. Those also go into foundations. So you can't have a high level of those ingredients to add filler and texture and everything for a deep shade, because it'll show up as ashy. So yeah, I kind of understand both sides. Like, I can understand how it's frustrating, but if you get something and you don't like it, at least in the US, you can return it. Or if you're swatching things in store, you can decide which one you like. So yeah, those are just kind of my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think down below. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. These are just my opinions and what I think is kind of helpful to keep in mind when we approach these things. Like most things in life, it's not black and white, it's gray. The truth is somewhere in the middle. I think it's good just to kind of keep an open mind. I guess I'll apply this gloss at the end here and just be kind of objective. I know it's tempting to kind of pile on or whatever, but anyway, that is my finished New Year's Eve look using mostly Patrick Ta products. I hope you guys found this interesting, and if you'd like to continue the conversation, please do so down below in the comments. I hope you all are doing well and staying safe, those of you who have entered 2025 and those who are about to. This video will most definitely go up in 2025, so I hope it's a good year so far for everyone. But yeah, that's gonna do it. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.